When I stepped onto that platform, I felt the weight of every gaze. It wasn't just because I was there. It was because of how I looked. They said I was too fat to do gymnastics, that my body was wrong, clumsy, that I should be ashamed just for trying. But I tried anyway. And that day, in that gym packed with voices that had laughed at me for months, no one laughed. They stood, and they applauded. And maybe for the first time I felt light, not because I had lost weight, but because I had finally been seen. I was never the kind of girl who fit the mold. Ever since I was little, I loved watching gymnastics competitions on TV. I thought it was magical how those girls would fly, spin, almost seem to float. But when I said I wanted to do that too, the sideways looks would come, along with the comments disguised as concern. That's not for you, dear. Your body isn't light enough. You should try swimming or guitar. What no one knew was that, even without lessons, I practiced in secret in my backyard. I made up routines. I memorized entire performances. And every night I went to bed dreaming of the day someone would give me a real chance. But it wasn't easy. There were tears. There was humiliation. There were people recording videos just to laugh at me later. I thought about giving up, many times. But something inside me told me that if I could hold on just a little longer, that day would come. And it did, at the school championship. But before I tell you what happened when they called my name and why the entire gym stopped to applaud me, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment below which city and country you're watching from. Your story might be very different from mine, but maybe deep down you're also just waiting for someone to give you a chance. I remember exactly the smell of the gym that day. It was a mix of disinfectant with sweat and a hint of the cheap perfume worn by the popular girls. I was wearing my black cotton shorts and the oversized t-shirt I used to sleep in. It was all I had. While the other girls stretched in their tight matching leotards, I tried to hide in the corner. But of course I was noticed. She came for the tryout. Must be to hold the mat. Laughter. Always the same. Quick, low, poisonous, like needles piercing without anesthesia. The coach pretended she didn't hear. Or maybe she did. And just ignored it. "Let's start the warm-up," she announced. I stood in the last row, trying to follow the moves, trying not to look lost, trying not to look like me. But by the third set of jumping jacks, my breathing was already off rhythm. And on the fourth, my left knee cracked, making me stop for a second. That was enough to draw attention. "If she's tired in the warm-up, imagine her on the floor," someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. My cheeks burned. From effort? From shame? Both. The coach walked up to me and lowered her voice. "If you want to sit and watch, that's fine, okay? Maybe it's just not the right time yet. Watch." Just a polite way of saying, "You're not good enough." I sat, and I watched. Every jump, every spin, every laugh that seemed to say, "You'll never make it." When I got home, my mom asked how it went. I said, "It was nice." Then I went straight to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and cried sitting on the floor. Not because of my knee, but because it hurt inside. It hurt knowing I could do so much more, but no one there believed in me. In the days that followed, I avoided the gym. I avoided the hallways where the team girls passed by, and whenever I heard someone laughing in the cafeteria, my heart would race, as if my existence was always the joke of the day. I thought about quitting, honestly, because there comes a time when you get tired of trying to fit into a mold that was made to exclude you. But then something happened. One Saturday morning, I went to school to pick up a book I had forgotten. It was early, the gym was empty, just a broom leaning in the corner and the echo of my footsteps on the wooden floor. With no one watching, I stepped onto the platform. I put on my favorite song, a soft instrumental version of Rise Up, and I began to move. Slow, hesitant, but in a way that only made sense when I was alone. I knew my body wasn't light, but it was strong. I knew my movements weren't perfect, but they were mine. And when the music ended, I felt alive. For the first time since that humiliation. You dance with your heart, just like your mother. The voice came from behind. I jumped, turning quickly. It was Mr. Gerson, the janitor. Had he been there the whole time? Sorry, I said, not knowing where to look. Sorry for what? For reminding everyone what real art is? He replied, smiling with his eyes. We talked for a while. I learned that he knew my mother, that she had been a regional champion when she was young, that dancing was something running through my veins. He asked if I wanted to train there on Saturdays when no one else was using the space. I hesitated, but something inside me said yes. In the weeks that followed, we came back every Saturday. He'd turn on the music, adjust the mats, help me count the beats and fix my posture. With the patience of someone who knows the worth of a wounded soul. I still wasn't an athlete, but I was no longer just the joke. I still wasn't a champion, but I was no longer just the fat girl at the back of the gym. I still had no audience. But for the first time, I had someone who saw me, and that was all I needed to keep going. I still wasn't a champion, but I was no longer just the fat girl at the back of the gym. I still had no audience, but for the first time, I had someone who saw me. Saturdays became my most precious secret. While the rest of the school slept, I'd put on my oversized t-shirt, tie my hair with the old scrunchie my mom gave me, the one she said brought luck, and cross the city to the gym. Mr. Gerson was always waiting. Always with that simple demeanor, calm voice, and a cup of strong coffee in hand. Today we're working on balance. Today it's rhythm. Today we just dance to heal. He didn't have a degree in physical education. He didn't know the technical names for the moves, but he knew how to see where no one else looked. When I messed up, he didn't criticize. When I got tired, he turned the music down. And when I got it right, he clapped by himself like he was watching the final performance of an Olympic routine. It was there, with no audience, no uniform, no one's approval, that I began to feel a different kind of strength. Not muscle strength, inner strength. The kind that comes from someone who's been ridiculed, ignored, pushed aside, but is still standing. Me. And this new me was starting to take shape. Music became my partner. I began to listen to the beats more carefully, to test new moves, to put into the routines not what I saw on TV, but what I felt inside. I danced with anger. I danced with longing. I danced with the urge to prove that I didn't have to fit into any mold to be incredible. And one of those Saturdays, something happened. The gym door opened earlier than usual. I froze mid-song, thinking it was someone from the administration. But it was Ms. Clara, the same teacher who coached the gymnastics team. She stood there watching me. I was sweaty, messy-haired in the middle of my movement. "Keep going," she said, crossing her arms. I hesitated, but I kept going. I finished the sequence, nervous, and she only said one thing. "You know how to use your body as expression? That's rare." She didn't apologize for having overlooked me before. She didn't give me any other praise. She just left. But it was enough to ignite something inside me. Because deep down, I knew what that look meant. For the first time, someone from the team had seen me with respect. A few days later, the unexpected happened. They were putting together the team for a new competition, the Inter-School Gymnastics Festival, which would take place right there in our gym. The whole school would be watching, but one of the starters, Bianca the favorite, had dislocated her shoulder. And for some reason I still don't fully understand, my name showed up on the reserve list. I found out in the hallway, a poster pinned to the coordination board. Presentation team, Inter-School Festival, Julia, Camila, Isadora, and as reserve, Clara Fernandez. My eyes could hardly believe it. Me? Immediately I felt the chill in the air. The laughter began again. Must be a prank. The scale broke and they put her on the wrong team. I pretended not to hear. But it hurt. This time though, something inside me reacted differently. I didn't want to hide anymore. I wanted to show them they were wrong. There was 1 week left until the event, and Bianca, even sidelined, still set the tone for the group. The teacher called me aside quietly. "You're a reserve, Clara. That means you only go in if someone really can't." I understand. But if you want to train with the girls, you can. I wanted to. At the first rehearsal, I was ignored. No one partnered with me during pair drills. I stayed in the corner, copying the moves, learning on my own. When I messed up, I heard whispers. When I got it right, they pretended not to notice. But I kept going. I arrived earlier than everyone else. I trained more. And when rehearsal ended, I came back at night to the gym with Mr. Gerson to repeat everything, without anyone laughing. The night before the festival, I got a message from the teacher. "I need to talk to you tomorrow early." My heart raced. I thought of 1,000 possibilities. Maybe they were taking me off the list. Maybe Bianca was back. Maybe. I arrived at 7 a.m. The teacher was there, alone. "Bianca won't be able to perform. Her shoulder got worse. You're in." Silence. "You'll be performing the solo routine at the end, the longest one." I froze. "Do you think you can handle it?" I swallowed hard. "I can." A lie. I was terrified, but I was also ready. Or at least more ready than I had ever been. That night, I barely slept. I went over the entire routine in my head. Eyes closed, eyes open, upside down. I knew this would be the most important moment of my life. Either I'd fall for good, or I'd turn the game around. Either I'd fall for good, or I'd turn the game around. The solo routine was mine, and I had only one chance. The morning of the competition, I barely touched my breakfast. My dad knocked on my bedroom door. "You sure you want to do this, Clara?" I nodded, tying my hair into a messy bun. I wasn't sure. Not really. But some part of me, the part that survived all the laughter, all the whispers, wouldn't let me back down now. The school gym looked different that day. Not just cleaner, but brighter. Decorated. Alive. Rows of chairs lined the bleachers. The school banner hung high, and a table full of judges sat near the entrance with their clipboards and cold eyes. I felt like I was walking into a war zone, and I wasn't even wearing armor. The girls from the team had their hair slicked back, glitter on their cheeks, leotards tight and shining like new. I had borrowed one from a girl who quit the team last year. It didn't fit right. It pinched my arms and left a mark on my back, but it was all I had. They didn't talk to me, didn't even look at me, as if pretending I didn't exist would make it easier if I failed. But I wasn't there for them. I was there for the girl I used to be, the one who cried in the bathroom after being laughed off the mat. I was there for her. One by one, the performances started. First came the duos, then the group routines. Applause, cheers, parents with phones held high, capturing every moment. And then, the announcer said it. Next up, performing the solo floor routine, Clara Fernandez. I could feel it, the shift in the room. A silence so heavy it pushed on my shoulders. I heard someone behind me mutter, "They're really letting her go up?" I stepped onto the mat, alone. The spotlight hit my face. It was warm, too warm. My heart was trying to escape my chest. I looked into the crowd. I saw classmates. I saw teachers. I saw people who never spoke to me. People who once snickered when I walked by, now staring, waiting. And then, in the back corner, standing near the door, I saw him. So Gerson. He gave me a little nod. Not big, not dramatic. Just enough for me to remember why I came. The music started. A soft piano. My cue. I took a breath and moved. Not perfectly, not like the videos online, but with purpose. Each motion, each step, was a piece of everything I'd held inside. The shame, the anger, the loneliness, the hope. I could feel their eyes on me. I could feel the judgment, melting. I spun, landed, lifted my arm like I'd done 100 times in the dark on Saturdays, with no one watching. Now they were watching, all of them. Halfway through, I heard a clap. Just one, then another. And suddenly, a rhythm. Clap, clap, clap. It grew, louder, stronger. I wasn't even finished, and people were already standing. I closed the routine with a slow, controlled landing. My final pose stretched into the silence that followed. And then, it exploded. Applause. Whistling. People on their feet. I froze. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. I just stood there, trembling as the gym, the same place where I once sat and watched others shine, roared in approval for me. The judges whispered to each other, nodding. But I wasn't thinking about scores. I was thinking about how, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the joke. I wasn't the extra weight. I wasn't the before in someone's transformation story. I was the girl who showed up, who didn't quit, who danced anyway. As I walked off the mat, one of the popular girls from the team stepped aside, clearing a path without a word, not out of pity, out of respect. I passed by the row of teachers. One of them clapped slowly as I walked. And when I reached the back of the gym, So Gerson was waiting with a smile and tears in his eyes. "You did it, Menina." I couldn't speak, just hugged him, tight, like all the air had been knocked out of me, but in the best way. And then, from behind us, I heard my name again. "Clara Fernandez, please return to the floor." I turned. The head judge had stood up, microphone in hand. "Miss Fernandez, would you mind joining us again for a moment?" Everyone turned their eyes back toward the center. My legs shook as I walked. "It's not common for us to comment before the official results," he began, voice steady. "But sometimes, a performance doesn't just deserve a score, it deserves to be remembered." He paused, looking around the gym. "Today you reminded us what this is really about. Not perfection, but courage." The gym fell silent again, and then someone shouted from the bleachers, "Go Clara!" I laughed, I cried, I bowed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the girl they whispered about. I was the girl they stood for. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the girl they whispered about. I was the girl they stood for. But the story wasn't over yet. The applause didn't stop when I left the floor. It followed me, down the hallway, into the locker room, and even into my dreams that night. I kept thinking it would fade, that maybe people would forget, that by Monday morning I'd go back to being the big girl from the back row. But I was wrong. Monday felt different. When I walked through the front gate, I expected the usual glances, the fake coughs that masked laughs, the sideways whispers. Instead, I got silence. Not the cold, judging kind, but the stunned kind, like people weren't sure how to act anymore. And then, something even stranger happened. A girl from the volleyball team, someone who'd never spoken to me unless it was to borrow a pencil, stopped me in the hallway. "Hey, I saw your routine. That was beautiful." I blinked, literally forgot how to speak for a second. "Thanks," I said, heart pounding like I'd just done another full routine. And it didn't stop there. A teacher smiled at me in the cafeteria. A younger girl from 6th grade ran up to me and said she wanted to learn to dance like me. Even the gym coach, who never noticed me unless I was late to class, gave me a thumbs up. Something had shifted. And then, the video. I didn't even know it existed until Tuesday. Apparently, someone's mom had recorded my entire performance and posted it on Facebook. Then another student shared it on TikTok. And somehow, some way, it went viral. Hundreds of thousands of views, comments from strangers, people saying things like, "This gave me chills. She dances with her soul. I showed this to my daughter so she'll believe in herself." I didn't know what to feel. Excited? Grateful? Terrified? Maybe all three. My inbox was flooded. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out. Some girls who used to laugh behind my back now wanted to collab on content. I tried to stay humble. I told everyone thank you. But deep down, I didn't know if I deserved any of it. Because the truth? I didn't perform that routine to go viral. I did it to survive, to prove something, not to them, but to myself. But something even bigger came next. The school counselor called me into her office. I thought maybe I was in trouble. I walked in, palms sweaty, but she just smiled. "Clara, I want to talk to you about something important." She told me the school had been contacted by a local organization, one that supports inclusion in youth sports. They'd seen the video. They wanted to honor me at a citywide event. I didn't even know what to say. "They're calling it a Rising Courage Award," she said. I almost laughed. Me? Courage? I was the girl who cried in locker rooms, who avoided mirrors, who almost didn't show up. But maybe courage doesn't mean feeling brave. Maybe it just means showing up anyway. I accepted. A week later, I was on stage again. This time in a city auditorium next to athletes and coaches and people with medals I'd only ever seen in magazines. They handed me a glass plaque with my name on it, Clara Fernandez, for reminding us what strength really looks like. I stood there smiling for pictures, but my mind was somewhere else. It was back on the cold gym floor, on that first day when I couldn't finish the warm-up, when the whispers felt louder than the music, when I almost walked away. And now, here I was, the same body, the same girl, but seen through different eyes. After the event, something even more surprising happened. The head coach from another school, a private academy with an elite gymnastics program, approached me. "Have you ever thought about performing professionally?" I blinked again. Seemed to be a pattern lately. "I'm not exactly the typical gymnast," I said, gesturing at my body. She smiled. "Exactly. That's why it matters. What you did out there, it was art." She handed me a card, said they were launching a new performance team, one that prioritized emotion, expression, and diversity, that I'd fit right in. I didn't give an answer right away. Honestly, I didn't know what to do with any of this. So much had changed, so fast, and still. Not everyone was happy. Some people whispered that I didn't deserve the spotlight, that I only got famous because of pity. One girl even posted a story saying, "Since when does being overweight when born being inspiring?" And yeah, that hurt. But it didn't break me this time. Because for every one of those comments, I had 10 more from people saying, "I started dancing again because of you. I showed my daughter your video to remind her she's enough." That meant more than any trophy, more than any like or share, because if one girl, just one, chose to believe in herself after seeing me, then every tear, every insult, every moment of doubt was worth it. But there was still one person I hadn't told all of this to. So Gerson. I found him the next Saturday, back in the gym, sweeping the floor, like nothing had changed. "You went viral, huh?" he said with a grin, not even turning around. "Kinda." I walked over and hugged him, tight. "They gave me an award. There's a coach who wants me to join a real team. People say I'm inspiring now." He finally looked up. I knew that before the world did. I smiled, but then I said the thing I'd been holding in. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." He tapped his chest. It's easy to see someone who never stopped shining. And for the first time, I let myself believe it. Maybe courage doesn't mean feeling brave. Maybe it just means showing up anyway. But I wasn't done dancing, not even close. The award sat on my nightstand like a piece of glass from a dream. I would wake up and stare at it, half wondering if all of this had really happened. The performance, the applause, the video going viral, the messages from strangers saying I'd changed their lives. It all felt surreal. But even with all that, there was something missing. Some question I hadn't dared to ask. Some truth I had avoided for years. About my mom. She passed away when I was 9, and all I ever remembered was that she smiled with her whole face, laughed loud and sang while folding laundry. But beyond that, silence. No one really talked about her. Not my dad, not my aunts. It was like her memory was stored in a drawer no one wanted to open. Until that night. I was helping my dad clean the storage room when I found it. A dusty cardboard box marked Lucia, personal. I froze. My mom's name. I looked at my dad. He was already staring at the box, eyes distant. "I thought we got rid of all this," he murmured. He didn't stop me when I opened it. Inside there were notebooks, old ballet shoes, a torn leotard, and at the very bottom, a VHS tape. I held it up. "What's this?" He hesitated, then sighed. "That was your mother's final competition." I didn't say anything, just carried it to the living room. We still had an old VHS player, buried under DVDs and dust. I hooked it up, slid the tape in, and pressed play. The screen flickered, grainy, faded colors, and then, there she was. A young woman stepping onto a gym floor, wearing a blue leotard, hair in a high bun, eyes full of fire. My mother. I didn't breathe. The music started. She moved like water, effortless, powerful, not thin, not dainty, strong, grounded. She looked like me, not in her face but in her body, her shape, her rhythm, her weight on the floor, and the crowd. They roared for her. I felt tears slide down my cheeks before I even knew I was crying. Next to me, my dad cleared his throat. She was a powerhouse. The judges loved her. I turned to him. "Why didn't you tell me?" He didn't answer right away. "Because after that competition, she got a scholarship, a big one, full ride, but she turned it down." "Why?" "She found out she was pregnant with you." The words dropped like a stone in my chest. She gave it all up. For me. The scholarships, the travel, the spotlight. And I never knew. I pressed pause. The image froze on her final pose. Arms high, chest out, a smile on her face like she had won the world. "You were her world," my dad said, almost whispering. But she never stopped dancing. Not really. She'd dance in the kitchen, on the porch. She used to say you danced before you even walked. I didn't know what to say, because in that moment, everything clicked. The way I felt when I danced. The reason I never gave up, even when it hurt. The echo of something bigger inside me. It was her. She was in every step, in every beat I followed, in every time I chose to stay and try again. And maybe I hadn't just been dancing for myself. I'd been dancing with her. Later that night, I went back to my room, opened my journal, and wrote down every memory I could still recall of her. Her laugh, her humming, the way she twirled me around when I was little, even if the music was just coming from a commercial on TV. And I made a promise that whatever came next, award, team, fame or no fame, I would keep dancing. For me, for her, for every girl who's ever been told she's the wrong shape for her dream. The next morning, I brought the VHS to school, asked the media teacher to convert it to digital, and a week later I uploaded a clip of it online. Just 60 seconds of her routine. I wrote, "Before they called me inspiring, this was the woman who inspired me. She gave up the spotlight for me, but I carry it now, for her, for all of us." The video exploded, not viral like mine, bigger, hundreds of thousands of shares, mothers tagging daughters, coaches commenting things like, "This explains everything." It wasn't just my story anymore, it was ours. And that week, something else happened. I got an envelope in the mail from the National Association of Youth Athletics. They were launching a new national campaign focused on inclusion in competitive sports, and they wanted me to be the face of it. Me, Clara Fernandez, the girl who once cried alone in the locker room. And when I read the name of the campaign, I laughed through my tears. Move like you mean it. Exactly what my mom used to tell me. Move like you mean it, Clara. The world will catch up. Now it had. Now it had. But I wasn't finished. I was just getting started. They flew me out in April. First-class ticket. Hotel with a view. A gift basket in the room with my name spelled in gold letters. It felt like someone else's life, not mine. The invitation was from the Phoenix Dance and Movement Institute, one of the top youth organizations in the country. Their new program wasn't about medals. It was about meaning, about using performance to tell real stories. And they wanted mine. I still remember stepping off that plane, gym bag in one hand, heart pounding in my chest. A woman in a sharp red jacket was waiting for me at the gate. "Clara Fernandez?" I nodded. "Welcome. We've been following your journey, and I have to say, you've already changed more lives than you realize." I smiled politely, but inside I was terrified. What if I didn't belong here? What if this was all some mistake? The next day, I entered the practice facility. There were mirrors everywhere, wooden floors that shined, and people, dancers, from all over the country. And none of them looked like me. They were thin, they were tall, they wore branded jackets, sleek buns, sculpted frames like statues. And there I was, Clara from the local school gym, wearing the same sneakers I wore the day I first trained with So Gerson. No one was mean, but no one spoke to me either. They watched me, like I was a story they had heard but didn't believe yet. We started warm-ups. I kept up, barely. My breath caught in my chest, but I didn't stop. Then came choreography drills, complex, fast, technical. I stumbled, twice. The instructor didn't say anything, just clapped and moved on. I sat on the floor during the break, towel on my neck, legs sore, spirit shaken. And then a girl sat next to me, short, buzzed hair, freckles, confident. "You're Clara, right?" "Yeah." "You're the one who danced after they told you not to." I nodded, unsure where this was going. She smiled. "I watched that video 100 times. Made me start dancing again." I blinked. She stood up and extended a hand. "Come on, you belong here. They just don't know it yet." That moment, that sentence, flipped something inside me. Because maybe I didn't have the perfect form. Maybe I couldn't nail every turn. But what I did have was heart. So that night, in my hotel room, I opened a blank notebook and began sketching a routine. Not for the group, for me, for the showcase. Every month, the Institute held a solo showcase, optional. Only a few dancers were chosen to perform. I wasn't invited, but I asked anyway. I showed the director my routine. Told her the story, explained that it was about my mom, my fear, and the moment everything changed. She listened in silence, and then she said, "You can open the night." That meant one thing, no warm-up act to soften the crowd, no safety net, just me, alone on stage. The day arrived, a real stage, lights, curtains, cameras. The theater held over 800 people, most of them dancers, coaches, critics, the kind of people who could open doors or slam them shut forever. Backstage, I held my breath, and then the curtain rose. Spotlight. Silence. The music started. A slow piano. The same track I used back in my school gym. I moved. This time I didn't worry about my waistline. I didn't care about perfect angles. I told the truth. With my arms, my chest, my feet. I showed what it felt like to be overlooked. To rise anyway. To love your body, not because it's flawless, but because it carried you through hell. I danced with everything I had. When I finished, I looked up, and the audience was on their feet, not clapping, cheering. The sound shook the air. I stood there, stunned. And then I saw them, the dancers who hadn't spoken to me before, now clapping the loudest. Some had tears in their eyes. I bowed, walked off stage, and that was the night everything changed again. The next day, the director pulled me aside. "How would you feel about becoming part of our national movement tour?" I stared. "Wait, you mean perform in front of real audiences?" "Real audiences, real cities, real change. You'd be our anchor piece, the closing act." I didn't answer right away. I thought of my school, my friends back home, Sue Harrison, my dad, my mom's VHS tape. I took a breath. I'd be honored. Since that night, I've danced in 6 cities. I've stood in front of thousands of people, young girls, boys, families, and told my story through movement. After every performance, someone comes up to me crying, tells me they almost gave up, tells me they saw themselves in me, tells me I gave them permission to try again. And every time, I say the same thing. You already had permission, you just needed to remember. But the biggest performance of my life was still ahead. And this time, I wouldn't be alone on stage. I never thought I'd perform there again, not after everything, not after I left that gym behind, the same gym where they once laughed, whispered, and rolled their eyes when I walked in. But life has a strange way of folding in on itself, of circling back. It was May when I got the message. A simple email, subject line, invitation to inspire. It was from Ms. Clara, my old gym teacher. Yes, her. She was organizing the school's first ever Body and Movement Week, a week of workshops, performances, and guest speakers to promote physical expression beyond body types, stereotypes, or scores. And she wanted me to headline the event. I reread the message 5 times, not just because it was surreal, but because it felt like closure, or maybe something deeper. I replied simply, I'd be honored. 2 weeks later, I stood outside my old school, the same blue gate, the same patchy grass, the same gym windows where I used to peek through wondering if I'd ever belong in there. I walked through those gates with a different posture now, not arrogant, but open, wider. Kids pointed when they saw me, teachers waved, some even hugged me like I was family returning from war. And in a way, maybe I was. The gym looked smaller than I remembered, but somehow also warmer. The bleachers were packed. Elementary students, teenagers, parents, faculty, and in the front row, So Gerson, still in his uniform, still holding his broom, still smiling like he'd been waiting for this day all along. I changed in the locker room, the same one I used to cry in. But this time, I wasn't nervous. I stood in front of the mirror, took a breath, and smiled. The routine I had prepared wasn't flashy, no flips, no dramatic poses, just truth. Truth, in motion. The lights dimmed. I stepped out, barefoot, in a simple black outfit. No makeup, no sparkle, no mask. And I danced, to a spoken word piece, one I'd written myself, a poem about shame, survival, and self-love. As my body moved, the words echoed. They told me to shrink, to tuck, to tone. But I was never made to disappear. I was made to move, loud, unapologetic, real. You could hear a pin drop. Every sway of my arm, every turn felt like shedding another layer of who I used to be. And when it ended, silence. Then one clap, then another, and then they rose. Every student, every teacher, even Ms. Clara, her eyes glassy, clapping with both hands over her heart. After the applause faded, I was asked to stay on stage for a Q&A. Kids raised their hands faster than popcorn popping. How do you dance without being scared? Did people ever call you names? Do you ever still feel not good enough? I answered each one honestly. Told them fear never leaves. That names still hurt. But that nothing feels better than being proud of your own skin. And then, one final question came. From a quiet voice in the back, a little girl with long curly hair and round cheeks. Can I dance with you? I froze, then nodded. Come on up. She tiptoed onto the stage. Her shoes were too big, her ponytail lopsided, but her eyes, bright. I knelt beside her. You ever danced before? She shook her head. Wanna try? She nodded. I started the music again, slower this time, and together, we danced, clumsily, joyfully, freely. The crowd clapped along, and as I held her tiny hand and twirled her across the stage, I realized something. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about planting something, leaving behind a seed of truth that might grow in someone else's heart. Because I had someone who saw me when I was invisible. Now it was my turn. After the event, while everyone was filing out, Ms. Clara pulled me aside. "I was wrong," she said. "Back then, I didn't know how to see you. I was too focused on form, on rules." She paused. "But you changed the way I teach." I smiled, not out of revenge, but out of peace. Then I walked over to Gerson. We didn't speak. He just handed me a folded paper. I opened it later in the car. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch of me, on stage. Arms lifted, body strong, eyes closed. Underneath, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "You were never the background. You were always the rhythm." I cried the whole drive home, not out of sadness, but because I had closed the loop. The gym that once broke me had become the place where I gave others permission to rise. The gym that once broke me had become the place where I gave others permission to rise. But there was still one final performance, one stage I never expected. I thought I had seen everything. The viral video, the standing ovations, the letters from girls around the world who said I helped them find courage. I thought that was the peak. But then came the letter. It arrived quietly. No fanfare, no courier, no gold seal. Just a white envelope tucked under my door. No return address, no stamp. Just my name, handwritten in soft black ink. Inside was a single card, heavy paper, no logo, no branding. Only this: "We saw your story. We believe it deserves a global stage. Tokyo, June 9th. All travel and accommodations covered. One condition: the story must be yours, and yours alone." At the bottom, only initials. I didn't recognize them, but my heartbeat did something strange when I read those lines. I showed the letter to my program director. She read it twice, then looked up at me, wide-eyed. "Clara, this is real." I blinked. "Real what?" She spun her laptop around, typed quickly. There it was, the Global Motion Symposium, a once-a-year invitation-only event where the world's most visionary performers, choreographers, and storytellers gathered, not to compete, but to inspire. No cameras, no live streams. Only those in the room would see it. Each year they invited a dozen artists from different countries, and only one was chosen to close the event. That invitation was in my hands. I laughed at first. "I'm not ready for this." She looked at me, dead serious. "Clara, you were born ready. They saw something real in you, something you don't fake or train. They saw truth." 3 weeks later, I landed in Tokyo, alone. No entourage, just my duffel bag, my notebook, my worn-out sneakers, and a folded photo of my mom tucked into the side pocket. The city hit me like a soft storm, all light, color, motion, everything humming. I barely slept that night. Jet-lagged and anxious, I stared out my hotel window watching the skyline breathe. The venue was even more surreal. Not a stadium, not a theater, but an open-air stage beside a river. Cherry blossoms drifting on the water, lanterns in the trees. It felt like a dream dipped in moonlight. The rehearsals were strict, timed, sharp. There were no introductions, no hugs, no one asking what inspired you, only, "Are you ready for your mark?" Most of them were professionals. Some had danced at the Olympics. Others came from elite companies in France, Nigeria, Brazil, South Korea. They had posture like statues, limbs like weapons, confidence like armor. And me? I felt like the soft center of a world made of glass and fire. The night of the showcase arrived, 12 artists, each one more dazzling than the last. I watched from backstage, wrapped in silence. One of them performed a duet with ropes suspended mid-air. Another told a story of war using only stomps and breathing. And then, it was my turn. Before I could panic, someone sat beside me. A woman. Gray hair in a tight bun, sharp cheekbones, calm eyes. She didn't say hello. She just looked at me and said, Everyone here can move, but not everyone can move others. She stood up before I could ask her name. They called my name. Clara Fernandez, performing Weightless. The lights dimmed. I stepped barefoot onto the stage. The wooden floor was still warm from the last performance. The audience, shadowed, silent, waiting. Not a phone in sight. Not a whisper. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. And then, the music began. A haunting soundscape. No melody. Just breath. Rhythmic. Vulnerable. My own breathing was part of it. And I moved. Not with polish. Not with perfection. But with memory. Each step was my story. The laughter I swallowed. The rejections I buried. The lessons I wore on my skin. I danced the gym floor from back home. I danced the silence that filled the locker room. I danced the ghost of my mother's final leap. I danced the freedom of that first clap, that first roar, that first time someone saw me and didn't look away. At one point I knelt, slowly, my arms lifted, as if offering my heart. No tears yet, only stillness. And then, I leapt, fully, without reservation, weightless. Not because my body had changed, but because my belief had. I ended the piece lying on my back, arms open to the stars above, eyes closed, and for a long second, nothing. Then someone stood, then another, and suddenly the crowd rose like a wave, slow and collective. No screaming, just applause, full, deep, and genuine. Some people had tears on their cheeks. One judge stood, hand on chest. Another bowed their head, eyes wet. I walked backstage in silence, breath shaky. They followed. Not all, but enough. Famous names. People I had watched online for years. They didn't ask questions. They simply nodded, touched my shoulder, squeezed my hand. One whispered, "Thank you for reminding us what this is about." That night I sat by the river. I pulled out my journal, opened to a blank page, and wrote slowly, "You are not too much. You are exactly enough. And the world is waiting for your rhythm." Words I never heard at 13, words I would carry and share for the rest of my life. But when I returned home, something unexpected was waiting. And this time it wasn't applause, it was a test. I came home to silence. No confetti, no stage, no spotlight. Just the quiet hum of the fridge in my apartment and the soft creak of floorboards that still remembered my feet. But my phone, that didn't stay silent for long. At first I thought it was more love. More of the same flood that followed every performance. Messages from girls who said they saw themselves in me. Parents thanking me. Strangers saying I made them cry in the best way. But this time, it wasn't that. It started with one comment, then 5, then 50. Why are we celebrating obesity? This is what happens when participation trophies go too far. Crying on stage doesn't make you an artist. It makes you a manipulator. It was like watching a mirror crack in slow motion, each line deeper than the last. Fitness influencers with millions of followers were reposting my performance. But not to praise it, to mock it, to dissect my body like it was a before photo, to turn my dance into content, to tell the world I was glorifying laziness. They didn't care that I trained 6 days a week, that I ate clean, that I had built my endurance and skill with every ounce of energy I had. None of that mattered to them. To them, I was just a headline, a fat dancer, a symbol of everything wrong with the world. They used my image like a weapon, to push their agendas, to drive engagement, to stir rage. And it worked. People came in swarms, to my inbox, to my DMs, to my comment sections. Some were subtle. "I think you're brave, but this isn't healthy. You're talented, but maybe if you lost a little weight, you'd be unstoppable." Others were cruel. "You're disgusting. You're not a dancer. You're a punchline. Hope the stage breaks next time." I read every word. Then I stopped eating for 3 days. I stayed off social media, didn't answer calls, didn't open the curtains. I just lay there, in bed, wondering how something so beautiful had become so ugly. It wasn't the first time I'd been called names, but it was the first time I felt like the whole world was watching while it happened. And the worst part? I started to believe them, started to look at my own video and see only the flaws, started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was wrong to even step on that stage. But then, a message, tucked quietly among the noise. It was from a woman I didn't know, a mother. Her daughter had watched my performance in Tokyo and recorded herself trying to copy it. "She's never danced before," the message read. "She always said she was too big, too clumsy, too scared. But after watching you, she asked if I'd sign her up for dance classes. She said, 'If Clara can move like that, maybe I can too.'" Attached was a video, shaky, vertical, a little girl in socks, twirling in a living room, clumsy, joyful, weightless. I cried harder watching her than I had at any hate comment. Because that was the reason I danced in the first place. Not to be praised, not to be famous, but to give someone else permission to take up space. That same night, I did something scary. I opened my laptop, and I wrote a post. No makeup, no filter, just me sitting on the floor, still swollen-eyed. I said, "You don't have to love me. You don't have to agree with my body. But if you think your opinion gives you the right to make someone feel less human, then maybe it's not about health. Maybe it's about power. I am not promoting anything. I am existing. I am moving in the only body I've ever had, and I'm doing it with grace, with grit, and with every piece of my heart." That post went viral too, but this time, the right way. People from all over the world reposted it. Not just dancers, but actors, writers, athletes, survivors. They shared their own stories of shame, of silence, of being told, "You're too much," or "not enough." And just like that, the tide turned, the comments changed, the noise softened, and I realized the backlash wasn't the enemy. Silence was, because every time someone shamed me, dozens of others stayed quiet, unsure if they were allowed to defend me. Until I spoke, and when I did, they found their voices too. I returned to class the next week, tired, changed, but not broken. My instructor hugged me without a word, then handed me a playlist. "This one's for your next piece," she said. It was called Unbreakable. I smiled, because I knew then, my story wasn't over. It was only getting louder. But the next piece I created, it wouldn't be about me. This time, I was choreographing for every girl who'd ever been told to shrink. It started with one girl. Her name was Sophia, 14 years old, thick curls, nervous eyes. She wore a t-shirt 2 sizes too big to hide the body she didn't think deserved to move. She waited after one of my workshops. Everyone else had left. I was packing up, sweaty and exhausted, when I noticed her standing by the door, clutching her bag like a shield. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the floor. I walked over and said gently, "You okay?" She hesitated and then whispered, "Do you think someone like me can dance too?" And just like that, I saw myself again. Not the woman on the Tokyo stage, but the girl outside the gym, watching through the window. I didn't answer with words. I walked over, took her hand, and pressed play on my phone. We danced. No choreography, no instructions, just breath, rhythm, trust. That moment didn't just stay with me. It shifted something in me. Because in Sophia, I saw the start of something bigger than me, bigger than any stage, bigger than revenge or applause. So I made a decision. If the world wouldn't make space for girls like us, then I'd build the floor myself. I called Miss Clara, the same teacher who once told me I didn't belong. She answered with silence. Then she said, "I've spent years teaching technique, but you're teaching freedom. How can I help?" Together we built a program. We called it The Floor is Ours. A dance collective for every girl who was told, "You're too big. You're not flexible enough. You don't look like a dancer." Open auditions, no mirrors, no makeup, no BMI requirements, just movement, just honesty. I expected maybe 20 girls. We got 147 in the first month. Some were overweight, some had scoliosis, some wore braces, glasses, hearing aids. One had a prosthetic leg. Another had never danced in public, not even in school. But they came, shy, scared, shaking, and ready. Week after week we trained. Not for medals, not for TikToks, not for Instagram perfection. We trained for reclamation. Each girl brought her own story, abuse, bullying, rejection, and we poured those stories into choreography. We made dances out of silence, of anxiety, of growing up hiding in the back of the room. Some nights we didn't even dance. We just talked, or sat in a circle, or cried, because sometimes healing comes before performance. 6 months later, we announced our first show, Weightless, a Rebellion in Motion, a one-night-only performance in a local theater. Low budget, homemade costumes, no corporate sponsor, no celebrity judge, just us. A full cast of girls who were never picked, never featured, never invited. And that night, the theater was packed. Parents, friends, strangers, even a few of the old coaches who had once turned us away. We danced barefoot, no glitter, no glamour. And it was magic, because we weren't trying to impress. We were trying to be free. There was a number where 5 girls moved through chairs in silence, symbolizing rejection letters. Another where a girl danced with headphones on, representing the way she shut out the world's voices to hear her own. I ended the show with a solo, not to shine, but to close the circle. I walked to the center of the stage, looked around at each of them, and knelt. I lifted my hand, and they joined me. One by one, all 147. No music, just silence, then applause. Not the loud kind, the deep kind, the kind that comes from seeing something real. The next morning, we woke up to news we didn't expect. Clips from the show had gone viral, but this time, we controlled the story. It wasn't about my body, or about shock value. It was about truth. Outlets started calling. TED, local schools, mental health organizations. Not for me, for the girls. They wanted to know how we did it. What made them dance like that? What gave them the right to feel so worthy? And the answer was simple. We stopped asking for permission. Within a year, we expanded to 5 cities, then 10, then international. The program was translated into 3 languages. We got funding, trainers, volunteers, but the heart stayed the same. Every new location began the same way. No mirrors, no judgments, no shrinking, only breath and room to move. And as I stood in one of the newest studios watching a 9-year-old girl with Down syndrome spin in a slow circle, eyes closed and smiling, I realized something. This was never about me. My story was just the spark. But the fire belonged to all of them. But one day something happened that brought it full circle. Someone from my past came to find me. And this time, they weren't angry. They were inspired. It was supposed to be just another rehearsal. Same studio. Same creaky floorboards. Same playlist humming low from the corner speaker. But then I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. Then the door creaked open, and there she was, Ms. Torres, my old gym teacher, the one who told me I'd never have the right body for gymnastics, the one who made me sit out, the one whose silence once screamed louder than any insult. She looked different now, smaller somehow, older, but her eyes were just the same, sharp, searching, unsure. I froze. For a second, every part of me shrank back into that little girl on the bleachers. But then I remembered who I was now. So I stood tall. "Clara," she said. "I saw the article, the Tokyo performance. the foundation, all of it. I waited. No smile, no nod, just breath. Then she said something I never expected. "I'm sorry." The words landed like a soft weight on my chest. Not heavy, just real. She looked down. "I didn't know how to support someone like you. Back then I thought helping meant correcting, fixing, thinning down. But now I see, it was me who didn't fit." I wanted to say something poetic, something powerful, but all I said was, "Thank you for coming." She didn't stay long, just watched one of our girls, a shy 12-year-old named Maya, perform her solo. When the music ended, Ms. Torres wiped her eye, nodded once, and left. And just like that, a circle I never thought would close did. Weeks later, we were invited to perform at a national arts summit. Big stage, bigger audience, politicians, athletes, educators, decision makers. They asked us for our best piece. I told them no. Instead, I wrote a new one, a final one, not for applause, not for viral clips, but for goodbye. We called it The Final Leap. I didn't tell the girls what it was about at first. I just gave them a word: freedom. I asked them to choreograph based on what freedom meant to them, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The result was chaos. Beautiful, clashing, imperfect chaos. One girl wanted to scream, another wanted to lie still. One boy, yes, we'd welcomed boys now, wanted to dance with a blindfold on to feel the room without seeing it. I let them, because that was the point. The day of the performance, I wore white. No branding, no stage makeup, just fabric that flowed loose and clean, like I'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. As the lights dimmed, I looked into the crowd and saw familiar faces. Sophia, in the front row, my old therapist, the Tokyo judge with the gray bun, even Ms. Torres, and right next to her, my dad. We hadn't spoken much since Mom passed. He had always supported me in his quiet way. But there he was, holding a tissue, already misty-eyed before we even began. The music started. Not a song, a heartbeat. The entire piece was built around the rhythm of a real heart. Sometimes fast, sometimes faint, like life. We moved together, 38 of us on stage, and at the end, we broke apart. Each dancer went their own way. Some sat, some curled up, some stood still, and I ran, from the back of the stage to the very front, and leapt. A real leap, full speed, full height, no trick. For a moment, I felt like I was flying, and when I landed, I stayed there, kneeling, breathing, crying, not because I was sad, because I was done proving, done apologizing, done shrinking. The applause was long, not thunderous, but deep, soulful. People didn't scream. They stood, like something had been moved inside them that didn't have a name. I walked off stage into a storm of hugs, tears, trembling hands. And then I left the theater without looking back, because I knew it was time. Time to step away from the stage, time to let others leap. Now, I still teach, but not full-time. I spend most of my days writing, or visiting small schools that can't afford arts programs, or sitting on porches with girls who think they're too much or not enough. Sometimes I dance, but only when it feels right. Because the most powerful movements I've ever made weren't choreographed, they were lived. And if you're still listening, if you followed this story all the way to the end, then maybe you've been waiting for something too. Permission, relief, or just space. So here it is. You don't have to be thin to be strong. You don't have to be loud to matter. You don't have to change to be worthy. You just have to leap, even when you're scared, especially then. And if you ever forget who you are, just listen for the rhythm in your chest. That's your music. Now go move. And before you go, tell me, what city and country are you watching from? There's something waiting for you in the first comment, a guide that can change your relationship with your body and your self-esteem. And if this story moved you, click subscribe. There's more to come, and your story could be next.